Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to Gaming with me, Tony Mo, and we're here today checking out a little game called Raiders of the Broken Planet. Now, this is actually a game that was showcased very briefly, I think, during the Xbox Games Conference back at E3. It was just in one of the reels. I remember sitting in Twitch chat when I was hosting the E3 conference and saying, "Oh, what's that game? Like, what the hell is that game? Can we figure out what that game is?" And the name popped up, and we all ended up searching about it. And then I had the chance to play a closed beta test for the game, maybe 3 or 4 months ago now. And the other day, all of a sudden I realized it's out. It's out. And you can play the prologue, the intro to the game, for free. It's on PC, PlayStation 4, and on Xbox. And then $40 will get you a Founders Pack, which basically allows you to purchase the game and all of its episodic content that is going to be available at launch. So that is like the first episode plus I think 4 other episodes. It also gives you access to like some characters. Regardless of all of that, I wanted to really check the game out again now that it was out and everyone could play it and talk about it, because it was a game that I found really interesting when I played it in its closed beta state. It does some cool things, and considering the fact that you can download the demo for free, I think it's absolutely worth letting you guys know about it and at least, you know, pointing it out to you. Maybe it'll be something that sparks your interest. I think the big thing to note here is that it can be played in 4-player co-op. It's a third-person shooter. It is cover-based, and the cover mechanics are quite interesting. We'll get into that a little bit later on. Now, in terms of the game's visual design, its audio-visual presentation, it's a mixed bag of interesting things. Now, typically when someone says mixed bag, they mean it's a little bit good, it's a little bit bad. No, I just mean it's a mixed bag. There's like some Kojima in there when it comes to the characters. There's some toilet humor, the raunchiness of certain characters, the like visual design of them. One of the characters, the first character you actually see, the guy who leads the Raiders, if you will, Herrick, he's like Solid Snake meets I don't even know what the hell. But some of the cinematography, the way they do some of the cutscenes in the introduction, that even feels like straight out of a Kojima game. It's just, it's a really fun game. Like, it makes me smile, it makes me grin, it's goofy. It's different. It has a sort of Borderlands outlaw space vibe to it. And basically the whole premise is this guy Herrick is putting together this crew of misfits to kill the humans who are like coming to these planets and stuff. So you don't really get that part of the story right away, but once you realize what you're doing, you're just murdering these humans as these very interesting characters. I don't know, it's something about the game I really like, which is why I'm here talking with you guys about it today. So let's dive into the core gameplay mechanics a little bit, because there's going to be some things that I think people are going to love and hate here. It is a third-person, as I said, cover-based shooter. Now, the cover mechanics aren't like Gears of War in that you don't have to press a button to activate them, but they are like Gears of War in that they're actually really important. Taking cover is tied to one of the game's primary stealth mechanics called Aleph. A-L-E-P-H. Now, Aleph does multiple things. Number one, you have a pool of Aleph that will allow you to respawn. Once you die 3 times in a mission, you have to wait a minute before more Aleph is put into your transport ship so you can respawn. So that's one way in which the game sort of utilizes the death mechanic, if you will, and pushes for difficulty and punishes you for dying. Now, the other side of it is that Aleph works for both you as a player and your friends if you're in co-op, and the enemy to reveal your position behind cover. So you can actually see enemies when their senses are heightened, or when their stress levels are raised, I should say, through cover. And the enemy can see you through cover if your stress levels are raised. So the way that you lower your stress level is by actually staying behind cover, not just fighting out in the open. So if you wanted to play stealth, or if you were trying to break away from a fight so you could regen health, you would want to make sure that you took cover, allowed your stress levels to decrease so you wouldn't have that Aleph exposure. Just a really interesting and cool mechanic, and that's one of the biggest things that Raiders of the Broken Planet does, is it forgoes a lot of traditional concepts like having a sprint key for everybody, having, again, a traditional ammo, traditional health regeneration system, a traditional stealth system. It also throws away the idea of just picking up ammo off of dead bodies. Instead, you must actually melee and CQC other enemies via sort of a rock, paper, scissors mechanic. It's nothing really complex in order to actually get ammo. So if you run out of ammo, you have to engage in melee. Now, the melee system's pretty simple. You can either strike, grapple, or dodge, and you basically just want to do the opposite of what the enemy's doing to counter them. It is just really simple rock, paper, scissors, but much like Doom did with the chainsaw and the glory kills as a way to regenerate health or to regenerate energy, I really like this system. It's just something different. I think a lot of people aren't going to like it because it's not the norm, but I love when a developer decides to say, let's not just give ammo pickups or, have the characters buy ammo before a mission. Let's just try something different. And I think it actually works really well. It's something you have to pay attention to. All in all, the game's mechanics, they mesh really well. It just feels different than anything you've played before. And a big part of it is the speed of the characters. This is an area in which I think the game could use a little bit of work. No one really has a designated sprint ability. Some of the characters have movement abilities, if you will. The one guy has a jetpack, which is pretty useful. But they all run very, very slow. And you do actually have the ability to sprint, but it's automatic. So as you run in a straight line, your character will ramp up to speed and start sprinting, at which point you can slide. All of the roll and slide animations that a character might have a pretty significant set of frames after you do the animation where you can't do anything. I think removing those frames and allowing the character to freely flow as you slide back into a sprint would be a neat way of boosting the game's movement a little bit. But I also understand that maybe that's not the direction they want to go with. Some of the characters just feel extra clunky because of it. And for a game that is cover-based, you want to feel like you have a little bit more urgency when you move from one piece of cover to the next. Early on, like the levels that I played, at least in the prologue, are kind of linear, so it's easy to move from cover to cover. But it's just something I think the game could work on to make it feel a little bit more exciting, a little bit more exhilarating when you go from cover to cover. Because I do like cover-based shooters. And I really do like the olive mechanic, and I like the things going on here. The game just feels a bit too sluggish. They can still keep it slow and methodical, like Gears of War did, but just give us a little bit more oomph behind movement. Maybe a designated sprint button is something the game needs, but I think really just cleaning up the animation sets a little bit, removing some of those frames where you can't activate or move your character after a roll, and maybe just increasing the default walk speed of all the characters would go a long way in still embracing what they seem to want to do with Raiders, but making the game again feel a little bit more friendly. They don't have to abandon all of their decisions, the things they've embraced, their attempt to break away from the norm. Just speed it up a little bit, if you will. Now, when it comes to gunplay and like abilities and things like that, they're all tied to the different characters. So it has, I don't want to call it a hero shooter, they're just different characters. A lot of co-op games back in the day would give you a different character. You have a roster that you can unlock. They're going to release more characters in the future. They have their own sets of weapons that can be unlocked, their own ability cards that can be unlocked. They have their own default ability. Like I said, the one guy has a jetpack. Herrick can actually go into like this state where he stalks and cling to walls, and he can use his sniper rifle from that position for a limited period of time, and then he can, go basically teleport back to his position. The one girl has like a wall jump ability. One guy has this sort of graviton defense thing. So if you're playing in co-op, the ability to mesh those things together is going to be really cool. And it also gives you replayability. It gives you that diversity to say, I want to play this type of character or that type of character. So maybe you don't like Herrick because he's too squishy and you don't like sniper rifles. So maybe you go and play one of the other characters who's a little bit more tanky, who has a minigun, so on and so forth. So there's a decent amount of depth within the characters themselves. I mean, the shooting feels all right. Again, different weapons have different behavior. I'd say all in all, the one thing I've noticed from playing the prologue is the game definitely wants to be difficult. When you get caught out in the open and your health bar goes down to 0 and you have to crawl back to cover or, get your reload off so you can kill the enemies, it's not easy. It punishes you for being out of cover. It punishes you for exposing yourself and not being intelligent about your positioning. And I like that in a third-person shooter. That was one of my favorite things about the old Gears of War, especially when it went to multiplayer, was that you got punished for being out of cover. It wasn't this roly-poly game of watch me fly around out in the open. Games seem to have all kind of evolved to that direction where everything has to have like a super fast movement system. I love my Titanfall 2s, I love my parkour-driven games, but I also like the game that makes me think as I move from cover to cover. And if I was playing this in a co-op environment, really coordinate with my team to be in the right position at the right time. There's even some enemy types you run into in the prologue that can one-shot you, so you have to be very aware of how to counter-grapple them, how to shut them down, basically, which I actually really like the idea of that, like an enemy that's kind of slow and lumbery, but if they get you, they're going to kill you and wipe you out, and then you got to worry about your olive respawn and your olive pool and stuff like that. So I think just a very interesting game, Hopefully from some of the gameplay you're seeing here, you can get an idea for what the game's about, and maybe it's something that interests you. I really think the best thing that you can do is if you have a group of friends on whatever platform you play on, get them all to download at least the prologue and play it together and see what you think of it. $40, pretty good deal for all of the content you're going to end up getting in the game with the different characters, the ability to unlock new weapons. This is one I'm going to be picking up come October, as soon as I've got the spare cash to spend on some games, because I just think it looks really cool. I think I'll actually grab it on Xbox and play with my brother. I mean, just a fun little co-op shooter with a really cool setting. I think that's the thing that really gets me about Raiders, is that sort of Kojima vibe, right? That just like weird, strange, naked guy just broke out of a wrecking ball because he hates EDM music. It's a very weird, fun little game. And you know what we've really gotten away from, I think, over the last 5 years, is an appreciation for games that aren't necessarily perfect or flawless from a AAA environment, but games that just give you something that's fun to play alone or with others. Like, Earth Defense Force type stuff. Game, cult classic, dude. It's awful in a lot of ways, but it was wonderful. There's not a lot of people really embracing those types of experiences. When I look at Raiders, it reminds me of a game like EDF. It has that vibe with probably a lot more polish than EDF ever had in its early days. And I definitely think it's worth checking out, especially since you can play that prologue for free. So there you have it. Tony Mo's thoughts on a little game called Raiders of the Broken Planet. Pretty cool stuff. Definitely worth your time to at least see if it's something that clicks with you. Grab some friends, give it a go, come back here, let me know what you thought of it. And thank you so much for watching. As always, remember to play smart, remember to play to challenge yourself, but most importantly, remember to play for fun.